everybody. So I'm recording a video tonight about my top 5, in quotes, uh, open world exploration RPG board games. If you need a definition of what I mean by that, I have another video on my channel. I'll link to it here if I figure out how to do that in YouTube, um, about what I mean by that. Uh, it's a pretty specific definition. I think it's useful to go look at that if you haven't, because I'll be kind of talking about how each of the games that I'm highlighting here sort of nails and fails in some areas, where it nails the concept and where it sort of underperforms. Um, so these are not meant to be kind of holistic, 1 to 10 reviews. I'm not even going to try to rank these. I might in a different video. But really, this is a distillation of my exploration of the hobby of adventure board games. I've probably played, I don't know, probably 100 board games at this point, and most of them are adventure games. And I've really, for myself, sort of zeroed in on this concept of a game that sort of evokes the feeling for me of a tabletop uh, role-playing game. Anyway, go watch the other video if you're looking for a closer idea of what I mean. But I know that this video will be long if I don't get started, so I think I will somewhat just dive in. One caveat I have is, as I mentioned, all of these will have some things where they nail the concept and some areas where they fall short. None of these is my dream game. They are the top 5 that I would say get closest, but they all fail in some, for me, in some clear significant area. I'll talk at the end what's on the horizon, if there are games out there that might get closer to my objective. But to start, I actually have a couple bonus ones here. I have 2 games that I wanted to highlight first that I would call like honorable mentions. They're not part of this top 5, the upper echelon, and they would be if not for 1 or 2 major failing points that just kind of disqualify them out of the gate. So, number 1 of the honorable mentions is Lands of Galzier, which, if you haven't played Lands of Galzier, it's sort of it mentions a narrative adventuring in an open world game. Uh, I might, if people are interested, I might do individual videos on some of these as kind of follow-ups, show off the game a little bit if you're not familiar with them. But suffice it to say, Lands of Galzier involves you kind of wandering around an open world. You have this world map. You do a little bit of basic character creation at the start, and then wander around sort of just in an open world having adventures. It's a single session game, but the world is persistent as you make changes to the game, or as you take actions in the game, which is honestly one of my favorite concepts for a game. That concept of persistent living world. But so why am I disqualifying this one? Well, let me start with what it nails, which is this game, despite being a full-blown open world adventure uh, role-playing game, is like, I don't know how, it's like a 10 to maybe 15-page manual. It's incredibly brief in the rules. It's playable in like 1 to 2 hours in a single session. As I mentioned, you can then sort of chain that into successive sessions, bring your character along, and the actions that you take in the world persist. It has drop in, drop out co-op, meaning I can play with my character and then a friend can join me. They can roll up a character, do their little intro, and just immediately begin adventuring with me. It has a calendar system where time passes. Someone will join you for a couple days, and then, or like a carnival will show up in some location for a few days, and if you get over there, you can partake in it, but it might fade away. There's randomized events as you're going around. It has really like a huge amount of narrative. So, I mean, this sounds like an amazing game, but where it disqualifies for me is in one key area, which is that the game has basically little to none in terms of character progression. You make your character, you select, sort of your starting setup, you play the game for a little bit, maybe you get a couple items, you swap around your stats to get it the way you like, and literally within probably 15, 20 minutes of playing the game, you are, if you like your character, you're set with that character build for pretty much there on out. What you're doing from there is you're kind of going into little narrative adventures, choose your own adventure stuff, doing little skill checks. But that's pretty much it. You're changing the world over time. Like maybe you'll change a location or something like that. But there's no real progression for your character. And for me, that's just kind of you know, as I mentioned, I really enjoy character-driven narratives where the character's evolving and growing over time, and that just doesn't really happen in this game. I think the designer mentioned that that was something he just didn't want to do in this game. He wanted to keep the scope limited and success, but it just can never really reach the level of some of these other games I'm about to mention for that main reason. Also, the mechanics are a little bit, I mean, they're very thin, honestly. There's no real combat system or you're basically going into an app, reading a narrative entry, rolling some skill checks, and it'll go one way or another, and then it'll end. It very much heavily leans on choose your own adventure narrative content. So limited game. I love just kind of pulling it out, having a glass of cup of tea like this on a, listen, has some great music, has different seasons and stuff. It's a very chill experience, but I really, really respect this designer, but it can't sort of reach my upper echelons for me at least. So that's the first honorable mention. The second honorable mention is Folklore: The Affliction. So this one is maybe a little bit less known game. It's from, I don't know, probably 2018 or something like that. I discovered it late. The company, Greenbrier Games, is actually completely out of business, which is a little bit sad because this was a really innovative game for the time. Uh, I mean, this was, I believe, before Gloomhaven, etc. And they really when I talk about, if you go watch my other video in terms of all the elements that I'm looking for to try to simulate, or not simulate, but create the feeling and scope of a tabletop role-playing game, Folklore: The Affliction might be, out of all the games that I'm going to mention today, the one that gets closest. It has uh, a full-blown overworld map where you can travel along roads or off-road, and there will be randomized events that are contextual to whether you're on road or off road or whether it's day or night. These little narrative snippets, there's like a fast-paced battling system when you're traveling overland. And then if you visit a town, each town is defined, in terms of what's there and what's available. Each of the characters has specific town actions they can do at different towns. Heck, one of your characters can even die and become a ghost and roam around with you and still play, but then you have to like go to the gypsies and do this tarot mechanic to bring them back. Um, it has one of the things I mentioned in my other videos. It has a zoom in mechanic where once you get to sort of the story place that you're going, or in some of the later expansions, um, even cities, you can zoom into that local area and actually move around. It comes with probably 50 little local area maps. It has all kinds of character classes. Um, Rumors, you can pick up rumors in taverns and like get sort of a side quest that you can go get in the open world content. I mean, and then it has an actual pretty strong. It's sort of like as you can see here, it's kind of like a fantasy horror theme, um, gothic horror thing, like Castlevania style. Um, but you can there it has full-blown stories. It even came with when it first came out, it came with an adventure creation kit. Like they literally published a book about how to create adventures in this. So it's a full platform. I mean, if you were to pick this up, I recommend getting all of it. I mean, that's a lot to say, but there are multiple expansions. There's rumor systems. There's all kinds of fan-made stuff. It is a outstanding experience. So why am I disqualifying it? Well, um, it's pretty much, for me at least, it's an absolute chore to actually play. And that has nothing to do with actually all the systems in the game. They're all cool. I enjoy most of the systems and all that stuff. It's not even that complicated. The main issue is it's just an older game design. It was kind of before. I mean, I should have prefaced this, but I usually play my games, these like immersive narrative games solo. This one requires basically requires three characters, even two characters. They're like, you can try, but it'll be harder. So you basically have to three hand, and every character has just this mountain of like tokens and cards and little fiddly bits, and the whole system that they had was very archaic. I think they were mimicking try earlier like 80 and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They had kind of like a D100 system for everything, so you'll get like a piece of armor that raises your like armor chance by 3 out of 100. So it's like and the actual tactical combat, it has tactical like dungeon crawling combat in here, but this is an older game, so it's like super basic. You just kind of it always for me like ends up with all the characters clumping up on one enemy and just kind of rolling to hit over and over and over until it dies. Um, there's stuff like you absolutely need to bring a healer with you because there's no organic way to heal in the game aside from just a couple little items. So like having a healer that can actually cast heal and spend their mana to heal you is almost essential, but then that healer just becomes like a heal bot. They're basically like exchanging their mana for hit points. And so like when the heal bot runs out of mana, then you're basically gonna die. So it's the system itself that underpins all this amazingness is just really archaic and kind of not fun for me. So I've played it with three people, and that's the only way I probably would play it, so that each person can kind of manage their own character with all the tokens and stuff. But even then, it's hard to convince, honestly, for me, to people to play this game when there's so many other great campaign games out there. One day, I hope to figure out a way to like play this through, just because there's so much great stuff here. But again, this like Lens of Galzir, there's just like, even though it's some amazing stuff on display, and I respect it heavily. It just I have to disqualify it because of some things that just make it arduous to play. So that is Folklore of the Affliction. So now we actually get to my top five. And as I mentioned, these are not in order. These are just I selected 5 games out of all the games I have that best exemplify for me this sort of open world exploration concept. So again, we're going to do nails and fails here. And I'm going to start with one that is very, very near and dear to my heart. Some of you may know this one, some of you may not, but this game is Hexplore It. I have specifically chosen the Forest of Agramon here, which is one of the Hexplore games. And the reason I chose that one, it's not because I actually like this one probably the least of all the. There's, I mean, I'll give a little quick overview of Hexplore in a second, but there's suffice it to say there's a number of different volumes that have different mechanics, different settings, etc. But the reason I chose Forest of Agramon is this big bad boy. This is Fall of the Ancients, which is a campaign book for specifically Forest of Agramon. Look at this thing. This is a, you know, textbook math book, calculus math book sized, choose your own adventure, open world, narrative adventure that just, gives and gives and gives in terms of content. Um, the the Hexplore game itself is a sort of hex crawl. The ethos of the original games was to take the concept of a zero to hero Dungeons and Dragons campaign and do that in a few hours. Roll up your character, roam around. It has kind of like as you're roaming the map, it has survival roles and exploration roles and navigation, and you can get off track. And then there's quests that you can pick up, and you can get different items and level up and fight different bosses and have all these encounters and stuff. So it's a cool. I enjoy the core games, but the core games are meant to be kind of like they're almost like not really roguelike, but you're just meant to kind of like play through them in one sitting, level up, kill the boss. The worlds are cool, but this to me, the campaigns that they've created for these games just take that base foundation, which is really like a freeze-dried, dehydrated version of a tabletop role-playing game with all those underpinnings of exploration and randomized events and stuff, and then they just layer on this humongous choose your own adventure world narrative, but in this particular game, the first one, Val, Valley of the Dead King, I think was the first volume. Click's Madness was the first campaign, is more structured. You sort of have like 4 chapters that you go through, but Fall of the Ancients is a straight up open world experience. You just have a big map. there's a thing going on, and you just dive in, and you can go anywhere in the world, visit different towns, go underground, go to the Feyland. You can play for a huge amount of time. It is really a amazing achievement. As far as that goes. Uh, so it has, as I mentioned, you have this like generative content as you're exploring, like encounters. I don't know if I can pull up one of the maps here, but like in each of the different areas in the game, it'll have kind of if you're on this tile and you're in this situation, then um, this other thing happens, and uh, I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up, but essentially, yeah, here's one. So these are all just like triggered events that happen across the map, and if you're in this place at this time or whatever, go to this entry and have different choose your own adventure stuff. The game also like one of the corner pins for me is like recognizing what your character is. This has all these like triggered events if you're this race or if you're this class or if you're this you have this keyword. So all right. I'm going to stop gushing about it because I think you get what it nails for me, which is the blend of all the tiers of hex crawling, generative content as you're roaming around, and really rich choose your own adventure narrative content. So why is it not my best game ever? Some areas that it fails for me are actually some consequences of what it's trying to build on here, which is this sort of distilled down hex crawler, the actual core Hexplorate games. And some of the things it brings along from these games is that combat is pretty non-thematic and mathy. Like you have basically just like numbers for your different attacks, and then you roll a d6 to see which attack the enemy does, and you just kind of like compare your defense and your attack to their attack value, and lower some points. So a lot of the abilities are like multiply this times this, and then subtract this, and um, it's just a lot of the systems in the game, despite having all this richness in terms of what it can generate, they're not very uh, evocative. Meaning, like the combat is, like I mentioned, you're not actually moving around characters on a map. There's even in the Fall of the Ancients game, you get to a location, you're doing some choose your own adventure there. It's cool and stuff, but there's no map for the place that you're going to. Um, Another thing is that the writer for this, James, he's an amazing writer. He comes from a D&D background, and he does a really great job trying to predict kind of what the players are going to do. But in the end, this is close to sort of a choose your own adventure game book. Like this is huge, but it's really, you go to an area and then you read through some narrative and you make some choices and you read some more narrative and then you kind of get to the end, just like a choose your own adventure book. Um, there's one of the things that in general, I'm not a huge fan of timers in games because I really lean toward exploration. So, like having a timer put on my exploration is never something I really enjoy. And it's just a core mechanic of Hexplore as a system that there's a timer deck that gives you some like onus to keep moving forward, you know. In a lot of other games, you want to move forward because there's something you want to do, or there's something that might go away if you don't get there soon enough. But in this game, there's literally always a timer that is like ticking down. You can restore it and stuff, but this will be a theme in some of the other games I talk about. I don't like that kind of like, sword hanging over my head telling me when the game's going to run out. Um, I'll say this too. I love the variety of the worlds here. They have Ballad of the Dead King, which is more like traditional fantasy with goblins and stuff. The Forest of Acheron is kind of elven forests. You have like a Desert Sands, Arabian Nights, Dune style one, and then you have sort of a gothic uh, vampire one. But they're all a little bit. I mean, one of my things that's very important to me is detailed, lore-rich worlds. It feels like the worlds that were created for the original game, were kind of thin, if I dare say that. And then in the campaign books, they tried to flesh them out, but they're kind of working with thin material to begin with. So it's not like I step into this world, I'm like, oh, this is like a world with a huge amount of history and really well defined and cultures that it's more like, we had a kind of like somewhat generic concept for a world, and then we like threw on a bunch of narrative on top of it. So those are some reasons that it doesn't sing for me. There are some other games on this list that do some of those parts better, but this is still a really awesome experience, and I recommend you check them out. I call them my desert island games. So there's so many modes of play. The value proposition is really amazing. So number two will be, see if this even fits in frame. There's a box under there, but I'm just going to leave it. Um, this is Kings of Ruin. So as you can see here, I'm specifically talking about Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin. Um, Many people have probably heard of Tainted Grail. You might be asking, why did I not choose Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon, the original game? This is Kings of Ruin. This is the sequel. I'm intentionally choosing this one because I really love the world of Tainted Grail. It's sort of like a dark Arthurian. There's this weirdness mist that transforms everything. It's very darkly written. I love myself some dark fantasy. But the original Tainted Grail game had some mechanisms that I really don't enjoy in open world exploration games, which are survival mechanisms, like really having to manage how much food you get. And it just, for me, it leads to what I would call like grindy content. You're having to go out and grind food to survive, or there were these menhirs that you had to keep lit. So if they went out, then you would start dying. So you had to go back and replenish the menhir. It was just like, and they did improve it in later renditions of the game, but Kings of Ruin really like just kind of did away with it. Like food is optional. It gives you a bonus if you sleep, but you don't need it. The menhirs stay lit unless something removes them. They really took a lot of feedback to heart from the original game. Um, but so I mean, I'm sure as I mentioned, many people have probably played this game. You're kind of like laying out. I actually have it on my table right now. I'm in the middle of a campaign, but you're kind of laying out these really beautiful tarot cards that have, some art and some, link to other tarot cards. You're kind of building a map as you explore around. The art is beautiful. The writing, in my opinion, is really rich and well done. I mean, this again, everybody has their own taste, but I feel the world is incredibly well defined and detailed. At this point, they actually have like four different board games. They have multiple video games. They're developing an RPG. So it's a really rich, detailed world that you can move around somewhat at your own will and kind of go in different directions. It's open world-ish. In Kings of Ruin, they actually like narrowed that down a little bit. When you start the game, it's a little bit more on rails, but in some ways that makes it a little bit more accessible. It opens up over time. I really enjoy it. It's on my table right now. I'm plan to play through all the Tainted Grail games. So what are some of the reasons that it's not my favorite, or some of the areas I think it fails? Um, Aside, even in this Tainted Grail Kings of Ruin game, they address some of the things from the first game, like the survival and the, menhir grind. But for me, and this is just me, the core mechanic of the game, aside from the exploration and choose your own adventure stuff, is these combat and diplomacy decks. Whenever you get in combat, you have like a deck of cards that you're chaining together, matching symbols on the side and trying to like chain together your abilities to kill the thing. Similar with diplomacy, a very similar system. I'm I feel like it's a little bit stands out as not really, it just feels like a weird system to me. Like they kind of came up with it out of nowhere. They thought card games were cool or something. But the like symbol matching doesn't really feel thematic. It just feels like you're playing a weird little puzzly mini game in the middle of my narrative exploration RPG. I just don't really dig it. So in the Kings of Ruin, they actually added a card that basically says like, "Hey, you're awesome. You don't need to. Here's the card, Tactical Genius." I love it. I resisted this for a little bit because I hate playing on like easy mode, but it basically says. Um, you can just match cards without having to. There's a particular like bonus symbol that you have to do to like to chain stuff. They're basically like just match anything. It's fine. It makes the whole system way easier. It's still there. I still don't enjoy it when I get into combat, but at least it makes it way easier. Um, there's still a little bit of the survival mechanisms in here, like it's way reduced from the first one, but survival is just not my favorite. It's not truly open world. You're kind of like you can go north or east or move on these cards, but usually, like especially in Kings of Ruin, there's like an area, fixed area that you're exploring, and then you like go to a second area. It's not like you see the overall world map and can kind of go anywhere. There are also very few like what I would call generative elements. Like when you're moving around the map, there aren't events happening that feel like make the world feel alive. It's like when you go to a location, you can look in the book for the choose your own adventure stuff for that location. Um, the locations change sometimes and stuff, but I really like in games when you're kind of like moving around and things are happening that are unexpected and it makes the world feel kind of alive. There's also no custom character creation. That's kind of a thing for me. You choose a character from the start. There's a different character in every game. it's cool. I mean, some of the characters are interesting, but I actually feel like the characters don't make a huge difference. Like occasionally there'll be a little thing where it's like, oh, do this, you're in this location and that relates to your character, but the narrative rarely, in my experience, responds to the character that you are in really meaningful ways. So it feels more like I'm playing through a well-written choose your own adventure story with a little bit of overworld mechanics in a really rich, vibey world but with a little bit of weird mechanics. And yeah, I'm mostly just playing through. But I enjoy it for what it is. It's a beautiful game. But those are some of the reasons that it doesn't sort of raise to the top. Now there's another box on here, so under here, so I'm just gonna go ahead. The next one on my list, this will be a reveal, is Earthborn Rangers. I need to see if that's actually displaying properly because it's kind of a tall box. Yeah, that's all in frame. So Earthborn Rangers. What is Earthborn Rangers? It is a card game. Probably many people have heard of Arkham Horror, the living card game, which is a deck building game where you have some sort of moving around a scene. It's a narrative, some narrative elements, but you're playing somewhat. It comes from the school of Magic the Gathering and those collectible card games. Um, so what makes it well, Earthborn Rangers is from Earthborn Games, which was a number of people that came from Fantasy Flight Games, the people that made Arkham Horror and a number of other games. And Earthborn Rangers starts with that base of like a narrative deck building game, but the thing that elevates it to the next level for me is that it is an open world game, meaning there's a map of this valley. You literally can go anywhere in the valley at any time, meaning any direction. You can go from the first like little easy area down to the most dangerous area and get your butt kicked if you choose. And there will be stuff down there for you to discover. Um, and just the way that they do it, I mean, I'm not a huge card game person. I'm fine with card games, but I just find that when it's like an actual like, deck building and you're playing cards to do stuff, it sort of limits the scope of what can be done. But they do a lot with cards in this game. Um, and the deck, I'm also not like, because I'm more of a theme gamer, I don't really care about building the optimal deck or like met deck, what are they, net decking, or yeah, that was actually something that turned me away from Arkham Horror, is I didn't really care to optimize my deck. Um, but in again, Earthborn Rangers fully supports true solo. You can play with other people, but the deck building is super narrative, meaning like you'll encounter somebody, and when you do a quest for them, they'll like give you a card that's thematic for what they were, what you help, what they're about, and you can choose to put that in your deck or not. So you're sort of like building your deck over time. There are different character classes at the start that start with different sets of cards. But really, what makes this game special is that when you go to a location, you pull, let's say it's like, I don't know, a plains location that is also a town. You'll like grab some of the generic plains cards, which are cards that are customized for that terrain type, and then you'll fold in cards from that location, like specific NPCs or events or something like that, and you'll shuffle them all together. And then you're sort of playing these events out on the table to indicate you're moving through this area, and you might like run into this NPC or run into an enemy or encounter a terrain piece that you need to like overcome. And the overcoming of things is either done through harm. You can put harm on things, like literally attacking things, or you can evade, or you can, my character was like sort of a traversal specialist, so could like really quickly get over terrain and kind of just zip past enemies and stuff like that. So just again, one of the themes for me is player agency, being able to approach things in different ways. This does this to a T. Let's see. Uh, but the one of the most special things about it is the way things interact in ways that feel fresh, generative, and organic. What I mean by that is like you'll play out a um, plant that maybe you're trying to go harvest because it gives you something. But then you play a deer card, and that deer card has on it that every turn it will try to eat a plant. And so you're like, what? No, now that deer is eating the plant. And then you might play a wolf card, and the wolf card attacks prey cards, which the deer is a prey card. So maybe you're like, oh, maybe the wolf will get to the deer before it eats my plant. But then like a buck comes out and it'll actually defend the doe against predators. And There, you'll put down a terrain card, and like rocks are coming off that terrain. If you don't deal with it in 3 turns, it'll like kill the enemies in front of you and slam down to you. So like all these things are coming out, and they're sort of like organically interacting with each other in a way that I would never have expected from a card game. So it like paints this picture of just stuff you can kind of like, if you look past the cards that are in front of you and sort of picture the place that you're in, it almost more than any of these other games I'm describing today feels alive in that way, that things are just behaving in the world in the ways that you would expect. Not to mention, there's a calendar in this game, but when I said I hate timers, this one is special because just like Lands of Galzir, the calendar is not so much a timer as it is just a record of the world being alive, meaning at day 5, certain things will happen. Were you there? Did you like, you know, change the course of events so it went in the way that you wanted? Maybe, maybe not. If you didn't, then the world continues on. You could literally just sit in one place and the entire calendar could pass of like 30 days and a story will happen. It may not be the ideal story because you didn't actually like affect change, but it makes the world feel alive and not like there's just this artificial timer hanging over you, but more like you are nudging and pushing events in different directions. So kind of a masterpiece of a game. I'm amazed they did what they did with it. So why is this not my top game? What are some of the areas that it fails? For me personally, the it's still a little bit too tethered to that kind of like collectible card game, living card game base. It leads to kind of like weird abstractions. It feels like they're kind of struggling against that base to represent an RPG framework. So, for example, um, I might like have an item that like I equip some cool staff or something like that. But at the end of the day, I camp and the staff gets shuffled back into my deck. Everything gets shuffled into my deck, and I start fresh the next day. Like, why? Why didn't I just got that cool staff. Why do I have to like wait until the staff comes back out? Um, the deck building is improved, but it's still present. I'm not a huge fan of deck building. The actual like core narrative of the game is somewhat thin, and you don't actually have a lot of choice about that. Like you'll go to a place and it'll give you like a little paragraph about what happens at that location once you do what you're supposed to do, and then it just kind of is like, here's what this person says, and now you're supposed to go over here. But you don't have a lot of agency in that actual like. It doesn't feel like you're talking to an NPC or making meaningful choices in the way that like the Hexplore campaign are these like rich choose your own adventure stuff. It's really the events and the generative events that are the main stars of the show. Um, and then the actual RPG mechanics, the main things that I play these games for, like inventory, shops, visiting towns, NPC conversations, they're just not as present here. That's not really what the thrust of this game is. They were really seeking to create a sort of dynamic living world through cards. That's cool, but it just misses a lot of the other parts that I play RPGs for, um, around sort of like real detailed exploration and going into a town and what's in that town and can I visit the shop and can I talk to this person? It's a little bit more abstract than that. So awesome, awesome game. I really recommend it. I played through it almost straight. I rarely do that with games. It's not super long, but definitely worth it. So, my second to last one here is Dungeon Degenerates. This one has a storied history for me. I, let's say, I avoided this game for years. And if, um, let's see, if this is the type of art that I really like, the type of vibe that I really like, sort of dark, serious fantasy, what the heck is this? I mean, I just looked at this for a long time and I was so I mean, look at that. There's like people in S&M gear, like leather, um, super lurid colors. I looked at, some of the characters and there's just weird, weird stuff like, um, you know, sex dwarves and like just weird stuff. I was just like, okay, I cannot get into this world. I just didn't feel like it was taking itself seriously. And for me, that's a big deal. For me to feel invested in your world, you need to take your world seriously. It needs to be coherent. And this felt like just somebody just kind of just doing random stuff. So I didn't play it for years. I finally picked it up when I just kind of like someone was selling the whole set of stuff. Um, and honestly, I'm so glad that I did. Uh, I still have, well, I'll get to some of my fails on this thing and why it doesn't reach to the top. But in terms of the actual system that they put together for this game, it is just so unique. It, it, if Earthbound Rangers was the game that sort of did generative storytelling by having cards that interact with each other in interesting ways to sort of paint a what feels like an original scene. Dungeon Degenerates has this really defined map where you have like one region is sort of the crumbling kingdom of an old empire that's falling apart, and another part is this like spooky forest, and another part is these like swamps, and another part is this like hellscape with and each of these areas has so much personality, like that that crumbling that crumbling empire area that's like blue on the map. When you're in there, you'll like encounter more guards. You'll encounter checkpoints. There's like these mausoleums that you'll have like there's a whole basically each of these regions of the map has custom decks completely associated with them. So like every encounter that you have in the blue area, the empire area is all thematically directly related. So it feels like you are exploring that particular area. When you have a town event, it like knows that you are in this blue area, so it'll give you a town event that contextually makes sense with what you're doing there. There's just these huge stacks of cards with like encounters and events, and um, it just feels constantly like it's throwing an interesting story at you. Like one example was this is a minor spoiler, so if you want absolutely no, I mean it's just like a spoiler for a random event, but if you want no spoilers whatsoever, I'll jump ahead. But my buddy and I were randomly playing these like two reptilian characters that were, in the backstory of the game from some sort of sky kingdom, ancient sky kingdom that were coming to this mainland, and we came across some sort of like jar in a random place. We were trying to get past some demon that was blocking us from getting to a place where we needed to like uh, get rid of some object that we were trying to get rid of, throw it into some like pit of hell, and we discovered this jar. It was just a random event, but it was like this jar was created by these lizard creatures in this culture, and if you are of these lizard creatures, you kind of know how to operate it. And we were able to get in the jar and like fly across the map and zoom over the top of this demon and land and toss this thing into the pit. And it's weird, but like these little narrative, it's just constantly throwing out these like surreal narrative moments that feel completely original. It's like a storytelling generator. And once I actually started to get into it, I realized the world is really coherent in its own weird, strange way. There are NPCs that are recurring. They like fit within the lore of this weird world. There is a history there. There's actually like multiple lore books that they explain the backstory of this place. Um, yeah, let me see what else. Like they just the 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 knowledge of who your character is, like this is the responsiveness thing, like the player agency. There's all, not everything is combat. There's all many different ways around different things. Lots and lots of choices. Like a mission will just be like a page, but within that it'll literally have like 8 different outcomes at the end, depending on how you approach that mission in this open world setting. And it might send you to 8 different missions depending on like the changes you made. You can like ally yourself with the goblins instead of kill them, or it's just like, yeah, the freedom of choice is just uh, off the charts. And by the way, the combat system, it's completely unlike anything I've ever seen. You're just basically like rolling attack and defense dice at the same time. It's very fast, but it feels very thematic. Like your inventory, your character makes a difference. It's I'm not a huge fan of combat systems in general, but this one feels fast. It feels thematic. It feels snappy. So yeah, the what they did with the systems in this game and the way that they allow you to explore this world in a way that feels like I could play this for 100 hours and I would be having new little stories coming out. Um, it's all amazing. So this one might be a little bit easier to see why it's not on my, top game. But despite the fact that when I looked into it, I realized there's a really cool world here. It takes itself seriously within its own strangeness, and it really has a lot of strangeness. Um, it just, I don't, I can't gel with this. This is not the type of art that I enjoy. It's a very particular, reminds me of like Garbage Pail Kids from the 90s, like these trading cards, this really like grungy look. The creator is and was first and foremost an artist and has a very particular art style. This is kind of like a creative expression of his world. Um, but it's not my jam. So some people love it. If you love this art style, this may be one of your favorite games ever. Um, it's just really in your face. And even though, like I mentioned, even though the world takes itself seriously, it's just a little bit too on the nose for me. It brings in a lot of like modern concepts, like there's like weird, vague, like Nazi fascist symbolism. They're bad, but it's still like in the game. There's this kind of like counterculture thing going on. Um, it just feels like it's breaking the fourth wall a bit too much. Again, I want the world that I'm stepping into to feel like it's a real place. This feels like a little bit like a fabricated place. I've tried really hard to get into the lore. It just feels like a lot of the time like it's just kind of coming out like the guy has a dream and he writes another story or something like that. Um, so even though the role playing thematically is really strong, the mechanics are a little bit thin, like the actual character development and stuff peters out pretty quickly. Um, and there is a timer in this thing, which by the way, there's like the hand of doom that if you don't go fast enough, then this hand of doom gets worse. Things are basically it's like pandemic, like uh, locations are getting worse and worse, and then you have to like go there and do something to I don't need that in my RPG. You're kind of like, whack-a-mole going around the map trying to like stop places from reaching a certain point where then the game ends. Like, okay. So, yeah, some really amazing high points. I've had some laugh out loud, just amazing stories come out of this game. I don't think it'll ever leave my collection, but it's not one that I would just kind of like want to sink into and explore. I got to be in the right mood for it. So that is Degenerates, and my final uh top five exploration open world board game is, let's see if this focuses in. The top doesn't have, doesn't have the name, so it is Seventh Citadel. At points, I have called this my favorite game, but you know what? Honestly, I think with all these games, there were points where I said this is my favorite game ever, and then I've sort of like fallen off of them. But Seventh Citadel. So, what makes Seventh Citadel special? If you haven't heard of it, it is a sequel, sort of like not necessarily a sequel, but maybe a game in the same system as Seventh Continent. Seventh Continent was the first major game by this group, Serious Poulpe. They are French, I believe. Um, Seventh Citadel, I tried to get into. It was one of the first games where it was like back around when Gloomhaven was coming out. A friend of mine had it. It was really hard to find, and I was just really intrigued by it because it was just like 1,000 cards, and every single one of those cards was a different location, and you could explore this map just endlessly. Like talk about exploration. That's what Seventh Continent was, an exploration game. You just kind of land on this continent and you just start like, I have no idea where I am, and let's go this way and just start exploring. And you have all these adventures and stuff. But there were just some killers for me with Seventh Continent. It's not even anywhere on my list. The main things were it was really survival heavy. Like you had to grind food. You could, run out of resources and die. It was really punishing. It sort of was just expecting you to die. Um, the world was sort of this like, by the way, some people might be like, where's Sleeping Gods on this list? There are many reasons that Sleeping God is not on this list, but one of them is I'm just not as much of a fan of that sort of like weird early 1900s Age of Discovery um, thing that both Sleeping Gods and Seventh Continent did. Um, yeah, and it honestly it just wasn't really an RPG game. It was an exploration game with survival elements and stuff, but um, Seventh Citadel took that base of exploration, open exploration. And I, if you didn't like Seven Citadel, I recommend that you give another look to Seven. I'm sorry, if you didn't like Seventh Continent, I recommend you take another look at Seven Citadel because what they did is they took just those core systems of like laying out tiles and moving around an open world and the like flexible skill test system and they made an RPG out of it. Okay. Seventh Continent was a punishing survival game. Seven Citadel is an open world RPG. So they are not sequels. It's not like, oh, I didn't like Seven Continents, so I'm not going to like Seven Citadel. Seven Citadel, for me, is really exceptional. So what are some of the main things that it excels at? Um, Honestly, out of all these games, this might be the one with the most feeling of exploration. There's a really cool backstory about this really detailed world with a lot of history. It's essentially begins as like I mean, this is like the beginning of the game, so I don't think I'm really spoiling anything. But it starts as like a fantasy world. There are these kingdoms that were battling each other and stuff like that. It's very detailed. There's a full-blown map with all these like landmarks and different stuff. And then there was a cataclysm, and essentially these like worms came up through the ground and started destroying everybody through for some unknown reason. And it sort of you play as somebody that was part of one of these citadels that were built to try to there were these like necro druids that started making plants that were the only things that could detect and battle these worms. So everybody started kind of like depending on these necro druids who built these massive citadels and have slave gardeners that serve them to tend to their plants. And you play somebody who is part of one of those citadels, and the start of the game is that the citadel is collapsing and you're trying to escape, and you come out into this world that's kind of like changed. It's a post-apocalyptic world. I would say post-apocalyptic. It's post-cataclysm. It's a post-cataclysm fantasy world. You have a map, like you literally have a world map, but the world map is from before the cataclysm. So like seas have changed. The cities are still there, but maybe they're ruined, maybe they're gone. You don't know. The game just like leans into this concept that I've never seen another game do before, where you are given a history, you're given a setting that's really rich, but you don't know what's out in the world now. The world has changed. So as you're like using this map to explore around, I guess seven Tainted Grail has a little bit of that. They give you like a vague map. But there's something about this, like every time you reveal a card, the card is just rich with art and so many small details. Sometimes you have to like notice a little detail on the card to be like, oh, actually this is telling me uh, you'll get a card that is like now whenever you see this small plant on a card, it means that you can use it. So you're like on the location card, you see a little plant on there, and that means you can use that plant for some effect. Um, the skill system is pretty interesting. Like you have there are different the starting characters have different classes. There's kind of like a mage class, more mage-like character, a more agile character, a more leader character, a strong character. You can build them in any direction by doing some deck building, but like you'll have cards that'll be like, oh, you come across a chasm, and it'll have some symbols on it, like maybe jump or magic or levitate or like a bunch of different options of how you could engage, like deal with this challenge. And if you have cards like you're the mage, you could use some magic stuff to get past it, or you're the agile guy, you could jump over. It's something that's very hard to do in games, which is to present challenges and situations, but then allow your specific build and your specific concept of a character to engage with it. That's something this game does really well. Uh, yeah, it allows for sort of like this really quick theater of the mind storytelling. Like, you'll use like a talking thing to navigate a challenge. Um, that it has like really rich, well, somewhat rich RPG systems. You get like equipment and weapons, and those, aid you in combat and stuff like that. It's just like it's a world that I really want to explore and discover, and that's really important to me, that I'm invested in the world. Of these games, probably like Tainted Grail and this game have the most interesting for me, detailed worlds that I just want to go out and explore. So, what are the reasons? Sometimes I've been playing this game and like, this is it. This is like my ideal, so in so many ways, my ideal game. What is it missing? Well, some of the things are that the skill test system that I mentioned, it's cool, it's really flexible, but it's also a little bit thin. It uses there's a system in Seventh Continent where you're sort of like drawing stars to, I need like 3 stars to overcome this challenge, and you're drawing cards, and cards will have like half stars or full stars on them, and you're trying to combine them, and you just kind of like, it's a push your luck thing. You're trying to draw as many cards as you can to get the requisite number of stars. It just feels like yeah, okay, this is the system you settled on, that it doesn't feel very thematic to be trying to cobble together stars to me. You're yeah. So sometimes the skill testing feels really thematic, and other times it just feels like, well, okay, what are we doing here? Um, and that to me actually is the thing that holds this game back from greatness. Aside from, I mean, if I wanted to poke at it, the RPG mechanics can be a little bit thin. You don't have like a full-on tabletop RPG character sheet, um, they, in the end, the narrative is usually delivered by these like little snippets on cards and stuff. It's not a full-blown RPG experience in the way that like Folklore is. It doesn't have a tactical combat system, things like that. But really, the thing that holds it back from greatness to me, and actually sometimes makes me not want to play it, is that there is a really strict timer on this. And it's not like it's a weird timer. It's like a rubber band. The way it works is that you have like a certain number of cards in your deck that represent your stamina. And you need to usually go out and do something for a quest and get back to the Citadel before you run out of cards. Moving takes cards. Doing things takes cards. Doing skill tests takes cards. Getting hit makes you discard cards. So cards are your everything. Cards are your stamina. They're your health. Um, and so there's a way to like, it just creates this pressure on me that's sometimes not pleasant. Like I want to go explore over there, but I'm running out of cards. Do I need to go back right now? It's just very stressful. So um, yeah, it creates a pressure that I don't really enjoy in my exploration games. There are ways to just like make it easy mode, so you like get back more cards and stuff, but that also makes combat easier. That also makes skill tests easier. That basically just removes much of the tension from the game because the amount of cards you have is the main limiter for the game. So yeah, that I mean, aside those two things, the fact that it's kind of like a little bit less of a full-on RPG, um, with like not a lot of rich narrative, and the sort of the main structure of the game being based on this like dwindling set of cards. Um, those are things that hold it back from greatness to me. But this is an amazing game, and I recommend that everyone who enjoys open world games and just kind of like discovering cool worlds give it a try. Um, so yeah, that is gonna be it. That so to recap, since I'm gonna probably put a summary on this thing, my two uh, sort of honorable mentions, games that are really amazing. I'm always gonna keep them in my collection, but have some big disqualifiers are Lands of Galzir and Folklore: The Affliction. And then as far as my top five games for open world exploration games go, you have I started with uh, the Hexploret, specifically the campaigns. Fall of the Ancients is the example that I used. That is uh, the first one that I mentioned. Then the second one that I mentioned, I believe, was Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin, which here's the box for that. Next was, I believe, I'm just reaching around for boxes now. Next was Earthborn Rangers. Then we had, tell me if I'm out of order here. I hope not because I'm going to kick myself. Then we had Dungeon Degenerates, The Hand of Doom. And finally, the final one here we had at the end was Seventh Citadel. I hope this was a useful exploration. Feel free to ask me questions in the comments. I'm here to hear. I'm curious to hear if you have discovered any other games. Spoiler alert, if there's one game out there that I think, if you go back to my uh, okay, I'll just say this. There are two games on the horizon that I'm excited about in this realm. One is Lands of Evershade, which is by the creators of Tainted Grail, same writer, but leans much more into sort of like a tabletop role-playing style experience with keywords, custom characters, etc. Um, but the real one that I've played a tabletop simulator demo for, and if you go back to my video about sort of what I look for in a game, I would call it a modernized version of Folklore. Uh, that whole hog tabletop role playing experience, but much more modernized systems that may not have as many of the drawbacks that may disqualify Folklore is Story of Many. I recommend if you're into this type of game, if you're looking for something that simulates a tabletop role playing experience in board game form, please go check it out. Uh, it's a really cool game. I've played it by myself, the demo. I've played it with others. I'll do a whole video on. Actually, I have some other videos on Story of Many here just about how to play, but I might give a higher level thoughts video at some point. So this has been a long one, twice as long as my usual videos. Hopefully this was entertaining while you just stared at boxes while I talked. And yeah, that's where I stand right now as of May 2025. May do an updated video if my rankings change, but hope this was entertaining and see you all later.